In 1896, Utah was admitted as a state to the Union. At this time, a promise was made that the federal government could take possession of the state's resources, but in due time, the federal government would return the land and resources back to the state. It has been almost 120 years since that time. We still have not received back the land.
Come with me, we'll go and see the big rock candy mountains.
The federal government didn't honor its promise to Utah, and so Utah is $2.2 billion away from average in per pupil funding for its children. Utah's another $2.2 billion away from competing with states where the federal government did honor its promise, and they do have access to their lands and their resources to provide jobs, to generate a tax base, to fund essential government services. So where's the line for adequately educating our children, for unleashing full employment in our state, for growing the economic pie not only in our state, but also throughout the nation, and for securing the self-determination of our state? So here's the line, the arbitrary line. For all of the states east of Colorado, the promise was the same, and the federal government honored that promise to timely dispose of title to all the public lands. For all the states west, the promise is the same, only the performance is different. What's really interesting is a lot of people say, well, you states in the West are just different somehow, without explaining why. And yet look at Hawaii, to our far west. The federal government disposed of all of the land to Hawaii, and they control all of their lands and all of their resources. And yet somehow, our children in Utah aren't as good as the children in North Dakota. Our children aren't as good as the children in Kansas or in Oklahoma. Our children aren't entitled to have the same opportunities to responsibly manage the resources and responsibly manage our lands, to provide for education, to provide for a growing economy, and to provide for the self-determination of our state.
I think it's kind of ridiculous. Just looking at like the major difference that you can see between like any of the eastern states versus the western states.
I think the federal government having the national parks are great beauty and do need to be protected. But all the rest of the federal land that they have, I think needs to be turned over to the state. Maybe not all of it, but as a resident of Utah, I should have a say in how Utah land is managed.
Utah's a public land state. It's always going to be a public land state. The real issue that we're trying to do is getting more decisions on that land being done by Utahns.